Welcome back to your appointment viewing here on NewsX, where on prime time every weekday we bring you an important telecast that is as important for you, for us, and for all the people who've been partaking for almost 6 months non-stop, where we have interviewed now in the hundreds people who are involved in entrepreneurial activities, who are wealth creators in this country, people who are thinking strategically, tactically, running their businesses, getting us the models that are going to take Team India into 2021. The premise is very simple. 2021 must be a bigger year for India in its economic history than even 1991 was. We all have to do it together. We are in the same boat of India. If all of us succeed, then we can perhaps help the world succeed. In that note, here's a special telecast now of the Atmanirbhar Bharat series. We are more than 110, 120 episodes into this now. Joining us on the broadcast, let me introduce all our guests and also introduce Anurag Batra, Editor-in-Chief of Business World, with whom we partner in this telecast every day. Khushbu Solanki, founder of Zero Gravity Communications, with us. Shraddha Agarwal from Grapes Digital, where she is co-founder and CEO. Deepshika Kumar, founder of Speakin. Seema Prem, CEO and co-founder of FIA Global. And Pradeep Khatri, founder and MD of Digi Vidyapeeth Learning, all joining us on the telecast. Welcome to all of you, and Anurag ji, as always, kick this off for us.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you for doing this for the last 6 months. And as we've said, lives matter, but livelihood also contribute to lives being better. So let me start with Seema Prem. Seema, you run an impact venture. Tell us, what is the impact you made in the last 8 months? And as COVID shows no signs of abating, how do you see the road ahead for your venture and business and economy in general for at least the next 4 months?
Yes, so I belong to an industry which is called the business correspondent industry. So early on, during the lockdown, what the Business Correspondent Federation did was, we did a lot of advocacy to ensure that our services were classified as essential services, because we provide life-sustaining cash to the last mile. So as such, we were not impacted, and our businesses remained as is, which is pre-COVID days. The government also and the bank supported us quite a lot during this period, because more than 600,000 bank mitras during this period were the foot soldiers which provided cash, life-sustaining cash to rural India during the lockdown period. So on one side, we saw that our growth remained the same as last year. However, of course, expansion plans were severely restricted due to the lockdown, and also profitability took a hit. So I think that was broadly what happened during the pandemic. As of now, what we have seen is that growth is coming back to pre-COVID days, and we are using a phased approach to ensure that our expansion plans start off with cost being the primary focus. Now, the business correspondent industry is the barometer of the rural economy. So as such, we know, based on the transactions, the consumer confidence and the consumer sentiments there, how our industry will perform. And we are having to remain very vigilant nowadays. Right.
Thank you, Seema, for giving us that perspective. I would like to say, you said you have a good understanding of the rural economy from the numbers that you do in your business. Give us a sense of how has it changed in the last 8.5 months? Give us a sense of highs and lows in the rural economy. Because if India has to grow back again at 7%, 8%, clearly it cannot all come from the urban economy. It has to come from Bharat. The rural economy has to be also part of the engine of growth. So give us some data points that our viewers can benefit from.
Yeah, so I think, 10.41 million migrants actually went back to rural India, right?
Right.
And if you look at agricultural, farm laborers, right? Around 32% of them, their income in their households comes from non-farm work. So which means definitely income in these households were impacted, and we can't expect agriculture to actually, which contributes to 16% of the GDP, to lead the revival in the economy. Right now, 10.41 million Indian migrants went back to rural India. Manrega, to some extent, provided some relief during this period when their wages came down to an absolute zero. However, Manrega is not the complete solution, right? It provides an alternative when there is no job available, right? What we have seen now is that, yes, rural economy to a large extent was not impacted as much as urban, largely because one, we had good monsoons, and the demand for essential commodities shot up, especially food, essential food commodities.
And Zia, I just want to, yes, from yesterday's show, we had an entrepreneur who was in manufacturing, and he said, he gave me 2 data points. He told me in Gurgaon, Udyog, where his manufacturing is, and he's into the food business, that the number of walk-in laborers asking for jobs has grown.
Yeah.
And he also shared that the average, salary that he's paying to those laborers has actually come down. Not because he's brought it down, but, from a demand-supply standpoint, looks like the production is not back. And there are lesser jobs in even manufacturing, especially contract labor. We'll come back to you, but let me bring in Pradeep Khatri. Pradeep, you come in from the edutech domain, which is content dependent, but your domain has seen a lot of activity in the last 8.5 months. It's seen about $2.2 billion invested in the edutech industry only in the last 9.5, 10 months. Now, tell us, what is the pivot you have taken to be able to successful in this very crowded market? I mean, every company that is into content is now rebranding itself as an edutech player. What will make sure that what you do stands out and you are able to build a business model around it?
So the reason we actually got into this space wasn't really looking at it as a pure business model. It is almost like a mission for us. When you actually talk of the story of edutech industry over the last 8 months, or probably a little more than that, it actually dates back to 2014-15. The reason for growth is but obvious that online is the mode of choice these days as far as education and skill development is concerned. However, the way we see it as our business model is a bottom-top approach. We have actually based our model on a standpoint that we need to actually reach out to the last mile first, and then probably to the urban area who already have full of options available. And when I say that, it is basically our focus is on a decentralized economy. The way we see India's growth story, like you actually pointed out, that the growth has to now come from Bharat. India is almost at the saturation levels. Now, when I say a decentralized economy, there is a job distress. You already pointed out that the labor condition is such that the demand supply is actually pushing the cost down for the asking rate for labor. Now, in a scenario, if you actually look at the rural areas, can't we actually create hub and spoke model within the rural areas? Can't we actually look at developing entrepreneurship as a model? Can't we actually look at putting that Skill India mission of the Honorable Prime Minister in place in the rural areas first? Now, if I have to ask, each one of us know that tourism is one area which India can actually develop as a great potential. Now, rural tourism, the way we see it is at Digividyapith, is an important area which can actually be developed. Say every village in Rajasthan, every village in Himachal, J&K, look at the northeastern states, the type of potential these guys have. Look at some of the states.
And Pradeep, just to support your point, I keep saying that if we kind of give a fillip to our religious tourism, whatever religion you belong to, exactly. Of course, there is a dominant religion, and also to what I call spiritual tourism, which is again, being spiritual is not being religious. Let me clarify that for you. The third is, what I call is, ecological tourism. There are sites of interest which are huge in terms of ecology and what they stand for. And clearly, if that part of the segment grows, then clearly the clusters, the micro economies within villages will grow, because some of these are in remote parts of India which have good access, but really the cluster economy and the economy that surround these places will grow, and that will create growth that will possibly outstrip. And just to give you a data point, the city of Paris gets much more, tourists than the whole of India gets. Now, clearly, Eiffel Tower and the vibe that Paris represents is great, but we have so much to offer in India, and possibly with
Absolutely.
Corona, we will. So I just want to support that. Yes, tourism can be a big unlocking of.
And the story of dreaming of a government job, a job in a bank or a government school or a college is actually far-stretched. So let us all develop that rural economy, play around that area of rural entrepreneurship. You get whole lot of, you can actually create whole lot of jobs.
So, but Pradeep, you turned an entrepreneur in COVID times. You started an edutech company recently. So what, tell us how difficult it was to start a company, and what makes you so optimistic about the future of this country and being successful in a very, very cluttered domain?
I would say it's cluttered. The scope you pointed out that it's over $2 billion. It's pegged at $2 billion. It's not yet cluttered. The Prime Minister spoke of in 2014 of demographic dividend of this country. We are 130 crore people plus, and I'm referring to a 2011 census. If you actually dream of a 2021 census here, we might actually be 150.
And just for our viewers, by the way, if an Indian tourist visits a city, like Goa, he spends almost 1.5 times the money than an expat. The average is $800 for an expat, whereas the average for an Indian is $1,200 just in dollar terms. So clearly, Indians do spend when they go abroad or go to. So clearly, that unlocking may see creating new wealth for the country. Let me go on to Khushbu. Khushbu, you're based in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and you run a digital agency. Tell us, how have you pivoted in the last 8 months to be able to provide your clients, transformation ideas, and also make sure that you stay afloat and thrive?
So it's like a challenge for us also, like everybody else. We lost within that short 15-20 days of lockdown time around 60-70% of our clients because
They went on a pause.
Yeah, they went on a pause, and it was a dark tunnel outside which nobody was able to see that how is it going to come out. And the first thing that anyone does is cut down on expenditures or cost centers, and we are the first
Khushbu,
cost
next time a client of yours cuts down on expenditure on advertising, and I'm sure Shraddha is very keenly listening, you should tell them in good times you should advertise, in bad times you must.
You should advertise more.
You have to, and that's scientifically proven. It's not a media person saying it to the audience, but go on, Khushbu.
Yeah, so that's very true, but that convincing part of that, let's pause and let's just think about it after how the things are after a month or after 2 months, and also, it was a good absorption that we had. Plus, going home and advertising is a collaborative field where different creative people come together, ideas work when you have a sutta and a chai and suddenly you're sitting at your home and working isolated. So there's a huge...
Clearly, Khushbu, you're framing stereotypes. I did work in the advertising domain with India's #1 advertising agency, and you don't have to have a ponytail, or you have to smoke, or you have to drink to get
Precisely.
Let me say that you can get that by being a normal. But I understand the advertising culture. I worked for J. Walter Thompson before I started Exchange for Media. So clearly, I understand the water cooler talk, the cocktail parties, and the ideas.
So ironically, Anurag, I'm in a state which is a dry state. So we don't have as fancy or metro city like advertising culture. But whatever we have is that people come together and work, and which kind of got a little
We
bit...
understand that the clients went on a pause. So what did you see more activity coming back in September, October, November, around Diwali time, around IPL?
Yeah, I'll kind of take it back a step. So the one thing that we did was, once we got the realization of what we are losing and how we are, and we immediately kind of reassessed that essentials and important sectors which are still going to be relevant. How can we kind of bring our whole focus back onto them, and certain traditional businesses, like we saw a huge spike in real estate. So apparently we went on huge digital campaign for a couple of our clients in real estate, which really picked it up, in the time, because nobody was advertising. So the costs on digital were low. People had attention and time to listen and sit back at home. So we identified the sectors where we can kind of give them that audience. and comfort. to
And
people.
dare I say, just to add, that real estate as a sector picked up because two
Yeah.
reasons. One, people saved in the last 6-8 months because they were only spending on essentials. Second, millennials for the first time spent too much time in their homes. So the value of owning a
Realizing it's
home,
over.
that realization was more, and it is backed by data. Look at the sales in Bangalore in the last 2 months. Look at any city residential sales; they're better than any other year. Clearly, developers need to bring down the price points even further. But we'll come back to you. Let me go to Shraddha for her opening comment. Shraddha, how have been the last 8 months for you? How have you, while you transform your clients, you help them digitally, how have you transformed your business and prepared it for the future?
So, like Khushbu also added that the first 2 months were a little tricky because, you don't only survive on retainer as an agency, you have a lot of ad hoc revenue coming into from media, videos, film, etc., right, which went to a zero. But luckily, because we are from the digital world, we are seeing like we've gone back to 100% during the month of September, October. And then by now, we are at least running on a positive than what we were in pre-COVID times. From a trend perspective, there were two very clear trends that we adopted to. One was being where we started approaching our clients, not from a perspective what they need to do on social media on their website, but what they need to do with their stakeholders like traders, dealers, distributors. Can you do
Third party vendors.
Third party.
How do they integrate everyone in the
So
digital
I'll
value?
add to what Shraddha is saying. Actually, we went on to some traditional legacy businesses
Khushbu, let Shraddha complete and then
Sure.
we'll definitely. I would get everyone, including Deepshika, to make their opening comments and then we'll continue the discussion.
Sure.
Go on, Shraddha.
So basically, we got them to start doing a lot of advertisement, virtual events to try, meet their internal stakeholders. Anything that was going, we also started speaking to marketing heads and digital marketing heads only, right? Where we understood what is their business objective and how can we digitally amplify each of these objectives, where they were looking at any kind of on-ground or retail activity. So that was one of the major...
And omni-channel, I have to again give you a data point. While in the US, the e-commerce market has grown, in 20 years, it moved from 0 to 16%, but in the last 8 months, it moved from 16% to 26%. Even in the last 2.5 months of retail sales in certain sectors, doing the best ever numbers in the last 3 years, it was an omni-channel experience. It was not just digital. People actually walked into stores. So you're right when you talk about integrating the whole omni-channel experience and not just looking at the digital funnel. Tell me, what's been your preparation for future? I mean, this was Diwali time, IPL time. If the demand for certain products and services doesn't continue to be upbeat, how will you make sure you make up for the lost revenues in certain sectors, Shraddha?
So what we've done internally is we've started pegging ourselves against TV. So we've started with Google and Facebook where I have started the entire media team to learn TV plus planning. How do you read BARC numbers and create effective media plans against television, right, on digital front? Also, what we've started doing is we started focusing a lot more on e-commerce, which was, again, like, for example, if my client was spending $100 earlier and 30 used to come to me in digital, now we've started seeing them that they're spending 50 on us. So my media mix or share of voice has increased and we started planning accordingly, and technology. So we've also started investing a lot in IoT. How do we get Internet of Things?
So you went from becoming a digital agency to a more business partner which uses digital.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Deepshika. Deepshika, speaking in the last few months, has grown, and I know that you're very active as a business. Tell us, what is the pivot you took in the last 8 months as the physical events kind of dried up and digital became the way to engage with audiences and create events? Deepshika from Speaking.
Thank you, Anurag. And first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be talking to you. And thanks, Rishabh, for this conversation. So it's been a very exciting 8-month period, Anurag, for us. I hope all health restores very, very soon. But these 8 months have been the best months for us because the cost of holding conversations like the one that we are having now has gone down to nearly zilch. And both in terms
Clearly, you don't think we have a value on Rishabh. Rishabh, you do this free?
No, Deepshika is regular on NewsX. We value her very greatly. She has the value. You and me, Anuragji, you hold a great value for me. I just come here for the tie value of it.
But
Somebody has to wear a tie on TV. Carry on, Deepshika, carry on.
So I think in that sense, see, it's not just not just from a cost perspective, but also from the time and effort perspective. Getting legends and experts like yourselves together on a platform like this is far easier for us when we were doing it in person, and the time, the schedules, and everything else. So that has changed. The other thing that has also happened is, we were looking. I know Pradeep kind of and Raghu talked about the unemployment part and how the dynamics are going to change. We're talking about a 28% unemployment, nearly 8 million people out of jobs as we speak. So there is a huge appetite for reskilling and upskilling, and also learning and moving away from theory to the practitioner view. So, which is where, Speaking is a network of experts, people who've been there, done that, the CEOs, the people, who run functions, organizations, and more. So, therefore, the value of these people, experiences that these people share, the value that these people share has gone up dramatically, and which has really, really helped us. So we've just partnered with NSDC. We are partnering with the tallest of organizations, not just in India, but globally. And so I think it's been a good 8-month period for us. We couldn't
clearly. And Deepshika, why it's been good in terms, they say you shouldn't mistake activity for progress. Tell us what's been the business impact in terms of numbers on your business. If say in February you were at 100 rupees, where are you in November or in October? Tell us, has the activity resulted into revenues and profitability, or it is something that just made you more impactful and hopeful about the future?
So I'll share the trade secret, the numbers, the financials, but yes, it has helped in both things, Anurag. Both in terms of activity as well as the top line, as well as the bottom line. And the other big thing that has happened is that while we've all talked about more nationalistic fervor and all of that, but I think it has further flattened the world. So for us now to service a client in London versus a client in Hong Kong versus a client in Mumbai, Bangalore, it's just the same.
Yeah, the world is your stage, Clearly the markets have grown. I was talking to the CEO of a top OTT company in the world, and he said, now the audiences have grown because we're not just restricted by the geography in releases. We are now kind of, reaching out to bigger audiences. And Deepshika, you are only articulated what we've been saying on this show, that we are now in a 4C economy. I used to call it a 3C, I call it the 4C. First being a collaborative economy. Everything we do, we have to internally and externally collaborate much more than the future. Second is a contactless economy. Normally I would go to Rishabh's studio in NewsX and do it from there. I do it from my home, my study, and Rishabh does it either from the studio or from his home. Third is a caring, compassionate economy. We have to go beyond. We are all interconnected. We know what happens in one part of the world impacts us. And last but not the least, we are an economy that is focused on change and transformation. Because clearly some change is being forced upon us. We have no choice, and some is we are responding and kind of changing. So clearly, your business and what you represent is in some way a representative of this 4C. Khushbu, while Shraddha was speaking, you wanted to give an example of how you also advise your clients in terms of digital transformation. Please tell us.
Yeah. So more than an advice, it was more of a point that all of us, like companies like mine and Shraddha's, are not just become a third-party agency. We have in this time come very closer to the clients in a very consultative approach. So we worked with a lot of legacy companies who looked at digital as just social media, and that has changed to a point that now it is an integrated sales strategy of the company, because there's no other channel of marketing, or there's no other walk-in happening. So how are you going to do sales except for establishing that new system in place? And that's where they suddenly need fresh ideas, younger agencies to come up and pitch the things that they have not done, how seamlessly it can be done and all. So having said that, there has been beyond an advertising layer of consultative approach and to become a partner of the clients. That scope has opened up very big way.
Okay.
That you're not just coming here doing a one piece and walking away, but you're becoming a part of a journey. Empathy that people talked about, it wasn't just the buzzword. It was more about being there and working on solutions rather than giving
okay. I'm just going to interject here, and the premise is well drawn, because everybody's literally survival has been at stake, and that has put even I promise you, put people sometimes in business competing against each other together during a difficult time, and that's sometimes a good thing to happen, at least in extremis. I need to take a very short break, guys. We're coming back and we carry on this conversation on the other side. We're back in about a minute and a half. Come back. We're in the middle of a very, very interesting conversation with a group of very interesting people who are at the front line, at the pulse of how well the country is doing in terms of its economy. And yes, that is all that's important right now in this Team India. So let me quickly, pick up from where we were leaving off. Shraddha, what is the ecosystem change that we are seeing? You just heard Anurag tell us the 4 C's. So the logic of businesses has changed. But are we actually seeing a fundamental shift when we saying that market access to people is changing, products and services are changing, and the way that companies are going to function are changed forever? Or is it temporarily till the vaccine comes out and then we are back to square one?
So I genuinely feel in our world it will be a little more temporary because we are desperate to go back to offices, meet clients, be in their meeting rooms, etc. But one big change that happened in our agency is like we based out of Delhi and Bombay, and we had 2 different teams catering to 2 different cities of the clients, and more of my south and west were being catered by Bombay, and east and north was being catered by Delhi. But this time after COVID, what we did was we merged the 2 teams. So now we have a national CD, we have a national business head. Everybody is catering to all parts of the country. So that is one big change that we saw, and I don't know for how many days will we sustain that. But yes, there is a person like a copywriter from Bombay who's working on a client from Delhi.
Okay, having gone through what has been heck of a year, are you guys coming out of it full of confidence? Or there's still a bit of trepidation? Confidence, by which I mean that are we now creating in your teams, in your workplaces, world-beating, scalable companies, or are we just still some puzzle pieces need to be put into place?
Yeah, I think there's always be a puzzle to be put into place in the advertising in the digital world, but we are more confident about working in isolation, working from homes. I think that skepticism of whether that person will work from home, whether he'll be able to give the right ROI, because we are a service-based industry. Everything for us is salaries as a cost, right?
Yeah.
Has gone out of the window. We are more confident and trustworthy that if the work is given, the person will drive it ownership rather than trying to be the principal.
Okay, one other thought, and I want to get the rest everybody else in on that. We're talking about data, we're talking about AI, okay? Are you a data-centric company now? Are you guys involving algorithms? Are you now getting in AI algorithms to start advising clients? Somebody's telling me now the latest thing on advisory is using AI on space telemetry or on space geospatial imaging. Things are starting on real estate companies. Are you guys now becoming data and tech heavy? Shraddha?
Yeah, so we were already, I think, data and tech heavy being in the digital world, to be very honest. I didn't see that we became more tech heavy and more data heavy with this. We were already selling our clients audience insights and trying to tell them that you have to be more data focused than just being process focused. So that is not.
So let me rephrase the question. Okay, let me rephrase the question. So what I'm trying to ask is, you're getting data, right? And the data is telling you, okay, this is the audience size, this is the age, this is the geography. You can come down to now pretty much the locality in terms of targeted advertising. What I'm trying to ask you is, are you guys looking to invest in creating your own proprietary algorithms, your own proprietary artificial intelligence systems? Are you reaching out to tech companies to do that? Or is your strategy still based on the human mind applying itself to the data?
No. We are definitely moving towards driving more proprietary tools which can help us in driving, let's say, reviews and ratings on e-commerce platforms, or trying to do stripping of data from different websites so that we can provide more data solutions to our clients.
Okay.
So yes, the turn is definitely in that direction.
Okay, so you are also now going to be working with tech companies or creating your in-house tech. Let me ask Khushbu-ji the same question. Khushbu-ji, how is your logic on data and AI changed? Is it becoming part of your ecosystem, or is it something still which is a side thing, which is an add-on?
I think it's becoming a very much a focus to create a differentiation and kind of add the layer of more insightful and more target-driven solutions. We have to do that in our respective sectors or respective areas. So as a servicing company, more so we do that for client rather than for ourselves, because yes, we have gone, like I've tried all my life to get my team to work on, project softwares, which never happened, but now suddenly happens. So there's
Okay, yeah, same
definitely
here.
a shift and a change that happens on internally, but we try to do that very interestingly, and lot of tech heavy part for clients. So like I was saying before, we are changing legacy companies who never looked at digital, who never looked at web, who never looked at e-commerce, changing their whole sales models into that, contactless, how to get more digital focused, how to get them to understand the data that they have. Like,
No, but
so
okay,
far
but
nobody-
are these companies still doing that? Oh my God, tech focus means what? That am I listing myself on an e-commerce platform and that I'm considering a big achievement? Or am I literally creating that ecosystem where I have within my company the best of frontline tech? I'm involving blockchains, I'm involving AI, I'm involving data telemetry. Is that also, are you seeing happening, or are you advising people to do that?
Yes. Yes, that's, and somewhat we are seeing, not all of them, but it depends on, again, individuals and companies, but there has been a conscious awareness, questions asked, solutions requested, process, to be drafted, or to, when you're having generations working, younger generation is now pushing more to get the older generation getting agreed
Okay,
on to new
I'm
ideas
trying to
and
figure
new
out whether
processes.
we have the ecosystems in place. Deepshika, why don't you come in on that? When we are saying data driven, a lot of the, I'll give you an example. I get a lot of data, right, from 11 news channels, I don't know how many digital entities, but the data comes our way. Now, the X factor missing is who's doing the big data crunching. There's still a lot of human factor involved in it. We go through the spreadsheets and data and try to figure out things. How much of this is becoming, artificial intelligence? How much of this is becoming algorithmic? Deepshika.
See, Rishabh, I have a slightly varied view on this. What has happened is, and I was talking to one of the AI experts who's worked with Jeff Bezos in his core team, is that AI works predominantly on what has happened. Right? It will take the data on what has happened and then try to predict what will happen. The problem is that this year has taught us that whatever has happened had nothing to do with what has happened or is going to happen. So that has completely flipped the entire concept of, the way data is being looked at.
Interesting.
Having said that, we definitely need to be aware of the trends. And what is this, like what Khushbu was talking about, you need to, like right now, everything is defragmented. When you're in so many places, how do you create that standardization when people are working in different environments, different ways, different time zones and more? That standardization will come when you will understand the trends and convert those trends into processes and SOPs, which will then be communicated across your organization or across your chain of command. That is the use of data that I personally see. Second is, when you use data, when you understand trends, you as an organization become far more confident, far more trustworthy, far more stable and consistent, which plays hugely into becoming a brand which clients can trust. Like Anurag was saying, beautiful conversation. The compassion, the care that organizations or clients are looking for today, they are not looking for new people. They are looking for people they can trust. They want to work with people who understand them. And
okay.
then
What I'm trying to figure out, Deepshika, is, and I want to rope in Seema ji, is that as people out there in the entrepreneurial space, you guys matter the most because what you do is paying for livelihoods. I'll give a larger example. Let's say now we have to do COVID vaccine distribution, right? Now it's coming in a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, but it's coming. Now, and I'm being told another app is being created in which you can register for the vaccine. The government is going to be prioritizing with state governments, on the basis of where all the things should go. Now, there will come a time when an AI or an algorithm will tell you that in this district you need to send these many vaccines. The human aspect of that will become redundant. We'll be told that this is what the distribution requires to be. Is that happening in companies already? Or is it mostly humans, we are applying our mind to the data and then making the best of it? Deepshika.
You see, we are a fintech organization which has an AI-based platform, which does fundamental AI work for social good, which is financial inclusion use cases at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So for the last 3 years, we have been investing in AI. But what we have seen difference post-COVID is that a lot of our applications were actually either revenue impacting, risk optimization, or making lives of low literate customers easier. And these are proprietary algorithms using machine learning and deep learning technologies. Now, this year, what we have seen is that a lot of it we have extended to our back office operations, including HR. So, what I have seen in my organization is that we have compressed and kind of crashed 18 months of innovation in just 3 months. So we work in an area of
give me a practical example, maybe an anecdotal one.
I'll give you an example. So 90% of our field staff, of our staff are field employees, and they travel, right?
Yeah.
So we realized that Arogya Setu alone as an app would not allow them to travel safely. Also, we do have a lot of meetings which happen in our head office, right? So you have these employees who are traveling, and then they come to our head office to attend meetings in a closed environment. For the future, we were worried that, HR was not able to use any of these data points effectively. So what we've done is we have developed a COVID tracker where employees have to just log into the app and just enter their locations. Now, collecting information from various sources, the employee can then decide whether the zip code that he's going to travel next is in the red zone, quarantine zone, and once he comes back, whether he should quarantine or not. Now, and of course, a person sitting in the HR department can then use this information of various departments and then decide how do we ensure that they travel
the final
safely.
decision is still an individual taking it. You don't have an app with an AI algorithm is saying that Seema ji, you are advised not to attend the meeting because I have the computer, I'm telling you from your past history you should not go. That's not happening yet.
The app needs an input, which is where the employee actually logs in the information saying yes, right? So it automatically gives the information saying that the following people only should attend the
so
training.
it does. Okay, so
right, and these are high risk. These are in the green, yellow, red category.
Okay, all right. Let me get
it automatically decides.
And Raghav, I have to, Rishabh, I have to tell you that in some of the conferences in Europe and in America, there are already bots who are speakers, bots who are programmed to be experts on certain subjects.
Correct.
They are along with human beings. They are speaking at conferences. So the future is more interesting than we think. And singularity that is predicted by 2034 may actually happen much before that.
No.
Let me bring in Pradeep Khatri into the conversation. Pradeep, EduTech. Now again, it is about content consumption. Tell me, what are the motivations of a, EduTech consumer? Of course, it is upskilling. It is about learning new skills. It is about being more job ready. Give us a sense of what is driving India to kind of adopt the various EduTech platforms.
I wouldn't say what is driving right now. I think we are in a very pretty nascent stage. The bigger EduTech companies right now have actually gone into a mode wherein they're bringing in a whole lot of big MBAs, degrees from various international universities to India. I wouldn't actually qualify them as pure upskilling and scaling platforms. Now, you asked about what is actually driving, or probably the way I see it, what is actually going to drive them is something I would say a dialogue from an old Hindi film, "माँ मैं BA पास हो गया, हाँ और मुझे estate manager की नौकरी मिल गई है." Now we've actually moved from that era of 70s where BA pass was enough to actually get you a good.
And I keep saying I am an MBA, which is much below average. I am a much below average.
So most of us are actually much below average. So the times have actually changed. We have seen telecom revolutions. We have seen TV revolutions in our own sweet 90s. We have seen the smartphone revolution in 2010s, and we are now seeing, something like we're getting zoomified these days. So this is a pretty,
I keep saying we moved from gloom, doom to zoom. Okay.
Absolutely.
We in the media business have to invent terms, so we are always rhyming. But you go on. You're saying that there's a new technological wave and adoption of new methods of doing work, business, life, entertainment, and hence that is creating a need to be able to go for new areas of learning.
Plus, I keep on telling people these days that graduates, the plain simple graduates are back in fashion. Now, the type of skills we actually need. I've worked in the industry for 18 years, and I have no qualms conceding that we've been working on a similar thing, monotony, creeps in first 3 years, then you learn a little bit, and then you apply for 2 years, you search for a new job, and so on and so on. So there is not much that actually MBA degree or doing something else would actually teach. Exposure, experience. If anybody can actually, Joy Mukherjee in 70s can get exposed to an estate manager's job and do it well, do justice to that job. I think right opportunities given to a right person, I think will serve well. So with a plain simple graduation and right skills in place, something like Prime Minister puts it a Digital India movement. I think if people can actually go in seriously for that movement, even a sari wala can actually, a restaurant wala, a doctor, everybody needs to be digital these days. I think for that you do not actually need special education, huge degrees.
Certain skills are through application, they are through experiential learning. If you can't be a plumber by just doing a degree, you got to actually learn plumbing. So the vocational skills needed to be absorbed and put into practice, and that's what makes you valuable as a professional. At this point, me and Rishabh would like to ask you, you're all entrepreneurs on this panel today. What are your top lockdown lessons? What has become a new way of doing business? What are realizations you had in the last 8 months that will help you in good stead throughout your life, especially in 2021? Let me start with Deepshika. Deepshika, what has changed in your brain about how you do business and work, and how do you reimagine the future?
Number one, conserve cash. Cash is extremely critical.
Cash is not allowed. There's only Paytm or digital currency or check. Oh, cash mean you're saying that conserve cost, conserve money. Yes.
Yeah, the cash is the conserve money.
I thought you were very brave for a moment, but go on, Deepshika.
Yeah, this is life. So, and then the second bit is, I think people need to create standard processes, cultures, and everybody need to be over-communicate, be on the same page. And third is be very, very credible. Ensure that, protect your credibility, your trust with your customers, with your stakeholders, with utmost passion. And I think these three should save you through, should these repeat, the times repeat.
Okay, Shraddha Agarwal.
So I think two of the very important things is one, being compassionate towards people, because irrespective of the location, the education qualification they are, if you are able to put them to test, they will be performing for you. And second is very important is talking about returns for your clients. I think gone are those days where you can still prove that, okay, I'm going to do a good campaign and I'm going to drive brand equity for you, brand consideration, engagement scores, etc. I think you need to talk now, what is the moolah you getting in terms of bank account, not cash.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, before you get the rest,
matters.
Anurag ji, I need to take, we are also started getting advertisements, guys, by the way. So I need to take another short break for 1 minute.
good thing.
We carry on the other side with the rest. We're back in a minute. All right, welcome back. We in the middle of a fascinating conversation. Want to pick up Anurag ji with the rest. The question Anurag ji was asking, of course, is what are the lockdown lessons, and more importantly, when are we seeing the India's economy coming back? Many will say it's already coming back, but some will be a bit more introspective. Anurag ji.
Rishabh, clearly you heard Deepshika's responses. You heard Shraddha's responses. I was going to go to Seema Prem and ask the same. What are your top lockdown lessons?
So I think one, of course, was compassion. So we held a town hall on March 30, where we decided that we're going to protect all employees as long as we can. So, and that's been our mantra for this year. Save all employees' jobs and salaries as long as we can. That's number one. Now, you spoke about the 4 C's, which was change. So we were anyway doing AI and the machine learning related work. That's a part of our DNA. But I think we decided to innovate as if there's no future, and as if there's no tomorrow, not future. And I think that's what we have done. We have innovated. About 18 months worth of automation has happened in just about 2 to 3 months. Contactless and community was always a part of our pre-COVID days. But I think one area that we definitely emphasize, the 5th C, which we call as cleanliness, right? So we've got about 26,000 banking agents across the country, and we put a very special emphasis on creating collaterals and passing the information to each and every one of them, since they would be dealing with rural customers in resource poor settings and disseminating information about COVID. So much before the government even came out with the lockdown, based on based on the WHO guidelines, we had collaterals ready, which was disseminated to across the country in all states, all union territories. So I think that is what we have done differently.
And Khushbu, your top lockdown lessons?
So definitely what my co-panelists said, but on top of that, three things that I kind of got very close to me is one is agility. So whatever you are today, be ready and be agile to be, ready to face different tomorrow. Within lockdown to now, we've kind of seen different kind of things happening, working from home to coming back to again going back to work from home, and also agility was the main part. Second is perseverance. So, if as a founder, as a startup owner, if you kind of sit down and say that, oh my God, my business is gone, what am I going to do sitting at home? How am I going to get and manage a team of 50 people? That's going to pull you down. So, your perseverance is where your team depends on. And as leader, however small or big organization, those who manage to lead well kind of have come out very stronger, and that reflects on team. And third thing is life is super unpredictable. So we don't know what's going to happen today, tomorrow. Now, especially after 2020, we can't make long-term plans. However long-term we make, it's going to change. So while keeping a long-term goal in hand, I believe, keep that one corner in your mind where unpredictability is going to be a big play. And you be ready for it. And that's like major three things that I'm keeping very close to myself as a learning from 2020 and coming out of it, hopefully.
Thank you, Khushbu. I totally echo all the learnings that you and other panelists shared. But I agree with you that it was true before COVID, but agility is required much more than ever. Resilience and perseverance are the DNA of an entrepreneur. If you're a real entrepreneur, you should have that. And third, clearly, there's life beyond work. I mean, when most people hear me say that, they may think, what is he saying? But clearly, I also believe there's life beyond work. Though I've always believed there's nothing called work-life balance. If you love what you do and you do what you love, then why do you need to? But yes, there are parents, there are family members, there is a partner, there is a children. They need time, and you need to spend time on things that make your heart go fonder and warmer. Clearly, Pradeep, your top lockdown lessons.
My top lockdown lesson is that humanity can survive anything. And we as humans need much less.
We survived Trump also. For 4 years, this world survived Trump. So you're clearly right that we can survive anything. But I get, you're saying in spite of this huge pandemic, human beings have come together, helped each other, and, survived within this. Why we are seeing more than 1 million people perish to this pandemic. But you're right, we've still kind of moved on.
I want to add one of the key lessons that you learn in lockdown, which is on a personal level. I think people should start planning, start doing succession planning. Like I went through COVID, my entire family went through COVID. I have 2 daughters, and I didn't know what to do with them if something happens to us. So I think succession planning is really important, that none of the Indians, and especially young millennials,
Indian entrepreneurs don't believe in succession. Most Indian promoters would like to run their companies till they're 90 years young, and clearly that needs a different kind of mindset. And we Indians believe God is looking after us. COVID will not do anything to us. We don't, so clearly there is a mindset change. But I get it. You need to have contingency planning, and you need to do succession planning. Let me ask you a very straight question, and I want a very straight answer and a specific answer. When do you think the Indian economy will be back in full bloom? In 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months? And qualify your answer. Let me start this time with Shraddha. Shraddha, when do you think the economy will be back? Basis your own business, what is the sense you get? Of course, the 2 big variables are when will COVID start to wane, and when will a vaccine be in play in terms of distribution. But if we leave these 2 and this is the current information we have, when do you see the economy coming back in full bloom?
So for us, I think economy will be back by another 6 to 9 months, because by April 2021, you'll have new financial year advertising spends coming in. Last year, the advertisement spends for digital was anyway up by 65%, and we're already seeing 85% growth in advertising spends on digital this year. So for me, from a digital perspective, it has to come back by April 2021 max.
Okay, you are giving it's 5-month window, which is pretty optimistic. It clearly depends on whether a vaccine comes fast or the COVID start kind of waning. Deepshika, what is your point of view talking to leaders across the world? When do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom?
I think the impact will be different for different sectors, as Shraddha was talking about. But having said that, I think the horizon will be even longer than 18 months, because we still don't know what is the impact like. Maybe the Q1 and Q2 of 2021 will actually tell us where the demand pockets have completely become nullified. So I think people will become far more conservative in terms of purchase patterns, and all those things will change. So I think I would say it'll at least be 18 to 36 months that you will see it all coming back as far as the sentiment is concerned.
I agree with you, Deepshika. I keep talking about a K-shaped recovery, which means that certain sectors will recover much faster and have recovered, and there are certain factors that continue to decline. You saw in the last 2 months, hospitality and QSR had started to see some comeback, but again, with the last 10 days of spike in COVID cases, people are afraid to go to hotels. Khushbu, when do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom?
So, like I said, unpredictability, a week back, my answer would have been different. But right now, what has happened in last 10 days and what we've seen closely, I believe unless the vaccine comes in, it's going to be waves. So we are going to have few months which are fine picking up, and suddenly if there's no vaccine, there's a hit will come and it will go down. But not before mid 2021, I see that it getting any normalized unless the vaccine comes in. And even if it comes, I don't see a distribution system being in place to make it available to everyone. So sector wise it is different. Essential, non-essential, I differentiate between two. Then essential is kind of maxing out, that hasn't been affected. It has grown. In fact, Amul is spending more, and masala and food and F&B is spending huge.
Clearly,
but
food as a category has grown. We are at home, we're consuming
Yes.
more food, we're ordering more stuff. Also,
Yes.
home accessories have grown, technology has grown. You're right, you and Deepshika is right. We got to look at a sectoral impact. Seema Prem, what's your diagnosis? When will the economy come back? You'll have to unmute yourself. We're right now talking about unmuting the Indian economy. So,
Yeah, so 23 is when we can really say that the economy would come back.
you're saying 2022 and 2023?
22-23.
That's two.
Fiscal year
That's more.
22-23. Yeah.
Yes, that's more than 24 months away.
That's right. So, because next year we would only get to know, see, there are a lot of sectors which are growing, but you need to look at the sectors which have completely died down, and when employment is going to come back there, when business is going to come back there. We cannot afford any more major disruptions in supply chain, which we are seeing on a continuous basis. There are still lockdowns which are happening, and these lockdowns are...
Understood. You're saying 24 months, both on the supply side and demand side issues,
That's right.
which will only come to the fore early next year. Pradeep, your final word. When do you think the economy will be back in full bloom?
In 6 to 12 months, I think I can see the economy would be in much better shape than it is today. Fear is subsiding, commerce is inching towards normalcy, though we will not reach pre-COVID levels anytime soon. We are actually at 24% negative GDP growth in Q1. We've already seen that. And we should be back in track in 3 to 4 years. So I would tend to agree with Deepshika and Seema that it is gonna take much longer than, and not sure about that full bloom wala thing which you actually asked, but pre-COVID levels, I think
Okay.
it's gonna.
Okay, well, 3 to 4 years. Hopefully, that's a prediction that goes wrong. I can't imagine doing jugaad for another 3 to 4 years and across industries, just including the media. But we run out of time. Thank you all very much. If you are or have not got your digital marketing communication strategy sorted out, reach out to Zero Gravity Communications. Khushbu is there, based out of Ahmedabad. Shraddha runs Grapes Digital. They are based out of, as she's told you, Bombay and Delhi. So reach out to them. Deepshika, if you guys are organizing these webinars, conferences, reach out to Speak in Asia. They have, I believe, 15,000 speakers, various experts on call that they can help you out with. And Seema ji, of course, works with financial inclusion. So whether if you happen to work in government or you are an NGO that's working in this sector, they are specialists in creating financial inclusion, problem solving initiatives and products in rural places. And of course, Pradeep Khatri, check out Digi Vidyapeeth, check out Business World, and of course, keep watching NewsX. Thank you. We're back in a minute.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.